also limit your records that you want to see from the table by using one of the following. You could use a top command, you could use a limit command, or you could also use a row num command to limit what your table should really look like. So in this particular, also one important call out here is the syntax might differ based on what version of SQL and what kind of database that you are really working with. So if you're working with MySQL, it might be a little different from if you're using maybe Teradata SQL, things like that. So here, for example, I just want to see the top 5 records from order details and run it. That gives an error because this command doesn't really work with the version or with the SQL that we are working with here. So here what we can do rather is select star from order details and say limit 5 and maybe run that command. So you can see that the 5 records are presented from the order details table now. This is a simple this is equivalent to the head command in Python or R, where you just want to look at the top 5 rows or records of your table or data. Now similarly, you could also use the row num function. So instead of limit 5, what you could say is select star from order details where row num is less than equal to 5, and let's execute that. So this again would throw an error because that doesn't work in the version of SQL we are looking at. The editor here, it doesn't support this row num command, row num less than equal to 5, but you could definitely use that based on the kind of SQL that you are working with. You could also create tables. So these are just on the fly that you are creating. Now suppose in reality you really want the only 5 records to be stored in a new table. So for that you could create a new table with the statement create table maybe test as select star from order details limit 5. Once you run that, a new table gets created in your database called test and it has 5 records. That's very simple again. Now you could do a lot of other functions and all. You could check out the min max, how to calculate the min of a particular column, how to use the count, all of those things, and maybe I'll show you one example quickly out here. So with the same table, for example, you just want to see what is the maybe the minimum quantity from order details table, and we simply run this command. We see the minimum quantity as 1. Now we can do a few other things here. We can say what is the min quantity, what is the max quantity, what is the count of records, and what is maybe the sum of quantity. What else could we do? We could check out the average of quantity from this table. So if we run this, it throws an error because there's no such function called average. So I think here it is the mean. We'll try with mean. It again says there's no function called mean. I'll just that's my bad. So often what happens is in different programming languages you have different function names and it's very confusing at times. So the AVG is the function corresponding to average, and you could use that to calculate the average. Now what you see here is that min quantity equal to 1, max is 1000, count is 516, sum is 13k, average is around 26.5. and as you see, the names of these columns are directly the formulas that we have used, the functions that we have used. Now if you do not really want to have that, because this doesn't look good, right? So in case you wanted to have the minimum quantity as a different variable and call it min quantity, or maybe max of quantity as max qty, similarly count of star as count of records, Similarly, sum of quantity as sum QTY, and lastly average quantity as AVG QTY from order details table. And now let's see. Okay, so we have now renamed these columns in this particular table, and this looks great. So we have applied certain functions on our respective columns. There are other important things which I wanted to highlight here, which is about the SQL in operator, in and between. So what we will do here is we will go back to the order details table, and maybe what we can do here is we can simply, for example, let us take a different table, maybe the categories table, and let's see what we have here. Okay, this is a one-on-one mapping, so it doesn't really help in what we are trying to do. Maybe we'll go ahead with the customers table, and we'll show you a simple example what we try to do here. So now let's say we wanted to extract or just filter out this customers table for customers who were present in Mexico. So what we can do here is we'll say select star from customers where country in Mexico. So if we run this command, why did that throw an error? I'll just go back and check it one more time. Country is Mexico. Okay. Country in Mexico, and that should have been in quotes. That's a little strange. Let's use a parenthesis here and see if that works. Yes, that works. So the parenthesis here was missing, guys. So even if you have one particular criteria that you are trying to filter your table on, it still needs a parenthesis. Now similarly, in case you wanted to include more countries here, maybe Germany, you could do that also, and all you have to do is run this command. So you get all the records for Germany and Mexico, all the records of all the customers belonging to these two countries. Now similarly, if you wanted the opposite set of this, you would use not in instead of in. So that would give you customers for all the countries except Germany and Mexico. And between is very useful if you are trying to fetch records between two particular values. It could be two particular dates or two particular values of sales. If you're looking at a range, it's very useful for you to use the between command. Let's say we are trying to filter out all the records where quantity is somewhere greater than 10 and less than 50. So all we say is select star from order details where quantity between 10 and 50. So if we do that, we see that we got 384 results out of 516 results that the original order details table contained. So in that way you could subset your tables in a very effective way. Now the concept of joins is one very important aspect of SQL, and there are broadly four kinds of joins. So here it's shown 5 kinds of join, but we have 4 kinds of joins mainly, and we'll show you how exactly it works. So maybe the first one that we call left join. So imagine your left join, what it does is you have a particular table on the left hand side and you have one particular table on the right hand side. Now imagine this has 100 records and this particular table has 50 records. The table on your left hand side has a primary key called P1, and similarly you have the same primary key P1 on your second table with 50 records. Now the result of a left join on these two tables would give you a resultant table with 100 records. So what essentially is happening here is all the matching records from your right hand side table is mapped to your left hand side table. Anything that is there in the second table but not there in the first table doesn't get joined. So that's the concept of a left join. On the other hand, we have a right join where the same kind of structure repeats, but in this case what you are doing is you are merging the left hand side table onto the right hand side table which had 50 records and which had again the same primary keys P1 and P1. So the resultant table out of a right join would give you the 50 records that you would have in this particular table. But the third kind of join is an inner join, where what we are essentially doing is if this particular table has again the left hand side has 100 records and the right hand side table has 50 records. So what an inner join is doing is it's kind of trying to find out the overlapping area of the two sets, which is this particular area that we are really interested in. So this particular area is your intersection, right? So imagine that this is a set A and this is a set B. So inner join gives you the result of A intersection B. Anything that is common is shown in a inner join. Now the fourth category of join is a full join. This is very similar to the concept of union, where you have two tables, or in set theory in the representation of Venn diagrams you could think of this as two circles, and all you are trying to do here is that you are finding out the union of the two sets. So that gives you a full join. So hope you have understood the concept of joins, and that's pretty much very much useful in any kind of analysis with the data that you would do. The second other important concept here is that of union, and union and union all are really important things that you should be aware of. So what union does is, maybe I'll go back to the screen once more and explain this concept here. So what happens with union is more of so the union that I mentioned in merge or join is not the union that we are talking about here. So when we spoke about set theory and the notations that we have two different sets, and a full join essentially means A union B, where A and B are two tables or two sets. Now the union command here essentially refers to what we call as append in other programming languages. So what essentially happens is, imagine you have a particular table which has maybe customer ID and customer name, and that comes from table A. Now similarly you have another table which has a list of customer IDs and customer names, but these names are different from the one that is contained in table 1. If you wanted a resulting table which had the information combined from both the tables, so imagine this had around 25 records unique and this had 25 records unique, where there's no duplicates in between the tables. So your resultant table would have 50 records after an union. Now there's also another command called union all. And what union all does is, in fact, if you had some overlaps in the two tables that you are trying to append, what it does is it eliminates the duplicates and gives you the resultant distinct set of A and B. So imagine here you had some customers who were also present in table B. Once you used union, it would give you 25 plus 25, so it would double count, it would give you all the duplicate results. But if you used union all, it would filter out your table for any duplicates. So that's one main distinction between union and append. Now if we also wanted to probably talk about one other important concept, that is of group by and having. These are two essential components that I'll briefly touch upon, and that's going to be kind of really interesting in this particular context. So what exactly is group by and why do we need it? So we'll talk about three things here. One is group by, the second one is where clause, and the third one is having clause. So this is one particular area where a lot of basic questions in interviews are asked, and you need to have a good understanding of these three concepts. So what essentially group by does is, at the core, it does some kind of an aggregation. So imagine we have this particular table where we have by month and maybe the year, we are looking at dollar sales. So you have Jan, Feb, March, April, and it goes on. And then you have different years, maybe 2018, 2018, it goes on. And similarly, you have somewhere here, maybe 2019, and things like that, right? And you have some dollar sales values here. But if we asked you that from this particular table, give us the information which has the yearly sales values. So I really do not care about the sales distribution across months. All I need to know is, in 2018 what was my total sales, in 2019 what was my total sales, similarly in 2020 what is my total sales. So in case I want a distribution of sales by years from this particular format of the table, I would essentially have to use a group by command, where all we will be saying is select the particular column on which we are trying to group by. So in this case we are grouping it by on the sales dollars column. So we select that column, and whatever other columns that we need, we can put that out here just with commas, and then we will have to say which table we are selecting it from. So maybe this table is the table name is test. So select sales dollars from test, and we say group by the variable by which we are grouping. So in this case we are grouping by the variable year, so we would say group by year. That's it. And if we run this particular query on this particular table, that would give us this distribution of sales by year. Now that's very useful use of group by. And one important thing that I missed out here is you have to mention about the aggregation rule. So what exactly are you doing here on the sales value? So you are essentially summing it up. So you have to say select sum of sales, and you could give a variable name to it, maybe sum of sales from the table, and group by year. So that would give you the aggregated sales value by year. Now you could also use where condition to subset your data. Now for example, you just wanted to look at not all the years. Maybe you wanted to filter out for only 2019 and 20 maybe. So you could in that case give 2000 19 and 20 here.